most of the teams in tech companies will never achieve product at scale. This is a sad reality of how companies are operating nowadays. What you will see is that there's going to be a ton of wasted development. Your teams are going to be struggling on how to prioritize, on trying to identify what are the most important things. Sales teams, marketing teams, product teams, R&D, they're going to be constantly fighting and complaining at each other that there are no clear goals, that there are no clear objectives for the work that they are doing or what the other teams work that they are doing, and that they are not helping them achieve their own goals. You're going to end up with probably chaotic execution where the teams are just trying to rush to get things out, to produce as much as output as possible output, but not focusing so much on the outcomes. And basically, one of the big problems that you will see is that your customers are going to call you, your sales, your product team, and they're going to tell you that, hey, your product just hasn't changed much in the last few years. Seems like it's always the same. It seems that you are releasing new versions, but it's just always the same. Basically, you are putting out a ton of work, not just features, also marketing, also sales campaigns, but you are producing very little business impact. So now, how do you solve this? Well, today, let's go to the topic of strategic alignment. How to make sure that you are actually driving alignment, not just across teams, but also across initiatives and across goals. So you're trying to maximize the business impact that your team's work has. So I was talking the other day at an event here in Helsinki called Scan Agile. I was talking about this specific topic. So I'm going to run a little bit through the topics, what I was presenting there. I'm not going to show the whole presentation. If somebody's interested, well, let me know in the comments and I'll think maybe how I could share. But I would like to talk about the main ideas of strategic alignment. And there was quite a bit of interest on this topic because the reality is that most of the companies just don't have this. So let's go through the different things. So when you think about strategic alignment, I like to think about two main dimensions. One is the vertical alignment. And here you're looking into things like aligning with your strategy, aligning with your goals, with your C-suite, with your executive team, leadership team. So you want that the team's work is aligned with those strategic goals that are usually at the top, if you represent them in a vertical line. The horizontal alignment is just that you just don't align your work to your strategy, but also you make sure that you align the work across the different teams and the different organizations, business units, whatnot that you might have in your company. So what happens usually in the companies is that when a little bit what I was talking earlier is that, well, theoretically, teams are working together to achieve a vision, to achieve a goal. So product, development, marketing, sales, they work together. They try to achieve something. But when you look at the work that they are doing, many times it's kind of contradictory. It might be that product is looking into going to a certain specific type of customers and geography, but then sales is going into a different geography and a different type of customers. And the marketing might be looking into creating new campaigns for customers potentially that we are not yet selling to, just to be able to expand the opportunity or the business opportunity. But the reality is when you are doing this, everybody's going into different directions with all their best intentions, but they're not aligning. And yes, these are very simple examples of a strategy. There's more complex strategic goals that companies have. But the reality is that there's no alignment. And the goal that they should be working together, basically they're just kind of running away from each other. Now, what I like to use to do this is something that is called a KPI tree. I have had videos in the past about KPI trees, so I'm not going to go too much in detail about how to do a KPI tree. You can find the videos on how to use that later. I'll try to link it up here. But what you have in a KPI tree is that you first have a vision as a product or as a company. Depends if you have a multi-product company, ideally I would do a KPI tree per product, not per company. Because if you have too many products, it might be very difficult and the strategies are very different. Then you will have the different strategies. Strategy tells you how you're gonna win. Winning can mean going into a market for a specific customer persona, but can mean building the infrastructure to be able to sell your product so people can actually use it. So it can mean many things. Then, under each one of these strategic goals, you're going to have your projects. So you're going to have a project, and ideally a project will have a KPI attached. So if I manage to implement this project successfully and deploy it, this is going to improve the number of recurring users or the annual recurring revenue. Those are usually not very good metrics for this because they're very general and they can be affected in many different ways. Ideally, it's just one KPI that is really affected only by this project. So the idea is that probably you have around a handful of strategies, ideally no more than 3, because then you are diluting yourself too much, and there are going to be projects that are contributing to those strategies. This is what it looks like in theory, and it's a beautiful visualization. But the reality is how this is going to look like for most of the companies is that, well, it's not going to look as pretty as this. So first, this is an example, obviously. In the first case, for my first strategy, we used to have 2 projects. Now we only have 1 project. The second project had a KPI, which obviously I'm not going to hit because I'm not doing anything related to that project. The second strategy had 2 projects, and now I'm doing only 1 project. The third strategy has just disappeared from the map, so it's gone. So I'm not going to do anything for that. So this, how am I going to win? Suddenly, I'm completely missing one of those parts. Instead, I have replaced it with maintenance. Maintenance is very important. Maintenance basically is the work that you had to do to keep the lights on, to make sure that your product still works, and maybe it works a little bit better. You work on performance, on re-architecture project. Some of them, especially big ones, they can be very strategic. So you will have to guess or balance that out. And finally, you will have your one-offs. And these one-offs can sound very interesting, can sound very appealing. So I have 2 projects here. And these are going to be the one-off that somebody, a customer, comes with a request, or you hear a great idea of what I could put in the product that's going to attract a lot of people, or maybe sales wants to get a new feature implemented or promised to be added into the roadmap to close a deal. But these usually are one-offs that are not adding up to any of the strategic goals or strategic intents that I have in the company. So you're basically building a ton of features that are not contributing to the how do you win or to make sure that the product continues running. This is adding complexity. This is making it difficult for people then to be using this in the future. And it's trying to make a product for many when you should be concentrating on making a product for one or for a few, your ideal customer profile, so your ICP. Now, how do you usually does this look when you are working, how these one-offs look like? Well, usually what you have is that, for example, I talk about the customer request. This can be hey, we have this new feature. It will help us replacing any other tools. You probably have heard this, especially if you are in B2B. They want to add more features into your product, so they have to stop paying for other products. So basically, they want a suite of products that covers a big workflow. But sometimes this can be very challenging because, of course, different products are going to have different strengths. You can even see it with presentation tools to create slides. PowerPoint goes in one direction. Google, how's it called? I don't remember. Google Slides, probably. Yes, goes into a different direction. Canva allows you to create presentations, also goes in a different direction. So they all focus on different areas. And trying to do everything is just going to dilute them and usually make them subpar. And yes, this is a strategy that Microsoft has taken with Office, but that's not necessarily a strategy that most of the companies of much smaller size can usually take. Another example of this, it would be that, hey, you have a marketing team in your company and your marketing team is working for a product, which is great, but then there's a global marketing team. And the global marketing team wants to talk about the solutions that we are building across different industries and how they integrate together. But the interesting thing here is that the global team might be targeting a more general segment or a more general type of industry or type of personas, whereas your product is not very relevant for those personas, or it might not even be good enough for those personas. And then that's causing a problem that you're trying to promote it to the wrong audience instead of trying to go deeper in the target audiences that really are the best fit for your tool, for your product. And you could go on with examples for what sales could be doing and so on. I talked in the beginning about the consequences of this. There's quite many consequences. There's going to be chaotic execution. Basically, you are wasting your investment because your teams are working in initiatives that are really not driving impact. They are not driving your strategies. They are not driving how you're going to win. Then your teams are going to feel overloaded, burnout. I have many product managers coming to me over the years saying that it's just impossible to work. It's just everything is changing all the time. Priorities change. It's really chaotic. There's going to be tensions between products and sales. It's going to be very rare that those teams get along if there's no strategic alignment. Your users are going to feel like your product has not changed, which is a very, very big problem. In the moment that your customers start to feel like that, especially if after a couple of years, they must start looking for some alternatives. And basically, you are building a ton of features with very little business impact. Now, what are going to be here some of the costs? Well, one of the costs is that your productivity versus your team size or your efficiency is not going to be very great, because even if you want to scale your product, right now what's happening is that you are potentially adding product teams, but because you don't have a way of working for the teams to work together, your productivity is taking a hit. So you are adding more teams, but basically adding more teams, is not going to translate in more productivity. Definitely, it will never translate linear one-to-one. So doubling the productivity is not doubling a team. It might be that you had to have 3 teams to double your productivity, or I'm just coming up with the numbers, by the way. But the bigger the team size, the less the productivity is going to increase, which is going to be a problem for you in the future and on the long term. So it's going to be very difficult to really improve the way of being productive, efficient, to reach outcomes and to reach your goals. Because the more complexity that you're adding, the more difficult it's going to be to reach alignment. I like to also visualize this as well. I will try to put this diagram somewhere, because I think it's very important to understand that when you're doing this type of work, suddenly you see the work distribution. In many cases, this might be on the sadly optimistic side. 30% of the work is going to be strategic in a company, and that's really bad, especially in established companies. 25% is normal, that is going to be dedicated to maintenance. In some companies, it's going to be more. The more years that the product has, usually the more maintenance is going to require. And the work that is going to go to one-offs is going to increase over time, because there's going to be more requests. You're going to be drowning in requests. And if you don't have a system to really make sure that you understand how your requests align or not with your strategic goals, you're basically going to be driving just one-offs. Now, what I built over the years is a system to help me first identify a product strategy, work with the teams to really understand how does the product win, what are the areas where the product wins. This is even defining a complex product strategy is a complex process. So I'll try to link another video here. So if you want to take a look, because it's not so simple. But in the end, what you want to do with a product strategy is identify how your product wins. What are the key areas that are going to help you win this big opportunity that you have for your product, that market? The second is that it helps teams make decisions, and this is very key. If you don't have a clear strategy that tells your team that, hey, we're going to build solutions for this market space in these areas with companies or personas that have this type of profile, we are going to need to do this and this and this to be able to reach this, to win this opportunity. People are not going to have a framework to make decisions. They have to, for every single decision or opportunity that they see, they have to balance out what is the way that we win. And everybody will have a different interpretation. This is what you need to do as a product leader. You have to facilitate and provide a product strategy that is going to help them make those decisions. And finally, this product strategy is going to align the team's efforts around a goal. So this is the first thing that you have to have defined. If you don't have a product strategy properly defined, it's going to be very difficult to move forward. Then you are going to move in like steps upwards, where you are first, probably in the lowest step, you're going to be reactive. Work is basically happen in response to the needs that you hear, the requests that you hear, and you're relying a lot on the heroes. You will probably just seen this one. You have the person in the company that will come and do the thing and save you. It can be a salesperson, it can be a developer, it can be a product manager, doesn't matter. There's going to be the hero mentality. That person will come and save us yet again. It relies on individuals. The outcomes are going to be very predictable. Even if the individuals are geniuses and they're great, relying on just one individual is a very dangerous way of running a business. Then, and I'm not saying that you had to rely on an individual. That's a good thing. Ideally, you had to rely on all the individuals that are in your teams, not just in one. That's where I'm going. Now, the second level is going to be occasional. Some good practices exist, but they're not applied very consistently. So every now and then we might do some prioritization. Every now and then we might even include people like from sales and marketing in some of our planning sessions, but it's not something that happens regularly, and there's not a systematized way of working, meaning that the outcomes, again, are going to be not very predictable, a little bit better than the previous one, but it still relies on a little bit the hero figure. And then the next level is that you're going to start to have a structured practice. Okay, here you start to have some clear processes. Not everything is perfectly defined. Some of these processes are followed by the teams, which is good. And the work starts to be a little bit more predictable, repeatable, and less dependent on very specific individuals. So here you might be looking into using things like RISE for prioritization, or MEDPIC maybe for aligning or defining your sales processes. Now the next two levels, they can come in different order, but probably they will come in the order that I give them, but it can come the other way around as well. So the first one is going to be cross-team integration. So here we are looking at the horizontal alignment that I was talking in the beginning of this video, which is already about 20 minutes apparently. And here what we are looking at is aligning the goals from the different teams that are working in the product. And here, teams that are working in the product are going to be sales, marketing, product, obviously, product design, product management, engineering, data in many cases, DevOps can be also there, legal. It depends a lot on the organization. There are going to be less teams or more teams. But here you're looking at teams aligning, working together towards a shared goal. Then you have the next level, and here we're looking into the vertical alignment, the strategic system. So here what you want is that you have an organization that it's working aligned to a strategy, to a shared goal, and share across the teams. And teams, processes, decisions reinforce each other to achieve long-term goals. So here, basically, instead of doing a spray, how is it called, spray and pray, I believe, attitude, where you are just shooting in different directions, like I showed in the beginning, everybody going for different industries, different areas, different personas, and trying to solve many different problems. You instead do put everybody focused on one objective and everybody going together. The impact that you're going to receive is much more just because of the focus. Of course, you can be solving the wrong problem. There's nothing that ensures success, but the fact that you are being much more focused is going to help you really and improve the chances of success. I also built a pro operations maturity model that helps me analyze and evaluate this. So what I do with this one and how I work with companies is once I first evaluate the strategy, I also then evaluate their strategic alignment, but also their pro operations. The idea here is that when I evaluate the strategic alignment, I understand from the different teams how they work together, how they align with goals, do they have the same goals or not? And basically I rate these and find out in which areas they are more aligned and which areas they aren't, and then come up with a plan together with the team to see which ones are the areas to develop. The same goes for a pro operations maturity model, where you go with the team, working together with them, and then start to figure out in which level are they. Are they in the very early stages where they have not done much, for example, of price strategy, or have they been doing it in a regular way so it's managed, or they are scalable, or they're one of the leading companies having a price strategy that really can be translated for the teams to be used when prioritizing, when doing their work. So if you do this, you understand first what is the current situation, and then you come up with a plan together with the teams to understand that, hey, these are the areas where you're really good. Probably you don't necessarily always have to be better. Of course, you can use them as differentiation. So it might be that you want to even get better at that because that's your differentiating point. Or how you start to look into the areas where you are really behind or where you have not really started. So let's take it from a positive point of view. How am I going to start building a product strategy that is going to help my teams make better decisions? So then you come up with a plan of which are the areas that you think are going to help you take you into the future. And then divide it in phases and say, okay, in phase one, we want to aim to move the product strategy and the business discovery, maybe another couple of them, from the very early stages to maybe a managed stage, or maybe even to a scalable stage. And after those ones, we're going to concentrate on the data, the discovery roadmap, whatnot, whatever you define as your plan and agree your plan. So then we can start working together, putting the practices, putting the best ways of working for then the teams to really start achieving that, both the strategic alignment and both improving also the operations, the product operations, to really help them scale their product operations. So we talk about quite many things here. Well, we are now going down after this relatively long video. I want to do a very quick summary. And first of all, strategy and strategic alignment is usually something that it's going to help your teams finding how to win in a very complex market. There's going to be two ways of doing this: the vertical alignment, that it aligns with the goals of the company, it aligns with the strategy that the company has, and then the horizontal one that aligns the goals that the different teams have. Then you're going to prevent things like teams fighting with each other, sales not being able to ever talk with product never ever wanting to go to a meeting where sales is. Sadly, that happens. So we want to avoid that kind of behavior, obviously. Your teams, your product managers, your engineer leads, and even your sales teams are going to be feeling less overwhelmed, less overloaded, less burnout, because they will have a system to really be able to align and to prioritize the work that they are doing. Internal tensions and clear prioritization ideally start to slow down. Your users hopefully start to see that you are not just building features that have no impact, but you're building feature capabilities, promotions that are really targeted for them, targeted for those ICPs that you have. And in the end, you're not going to be wasting your investment in the product. You're going to start to see an ROI on the work that you're doing. This system is going to take time to get you there, and it depends a lot on how much time you want to develop or implement this system into your company. It depends a lot on your current situation. You are going to take more or less time to really improve the process. So there's no like a quick fix for a failing product strategy or total lack of strategic alignment. Of course, there are going to be quick wins, and we will talk about those in a moment. So I would say, excuse me, ideally, you want to look first in how to identify those quick wins. That would be my very first tip. What could be your quick wins? Sometimes it can be something like, well, we have never done business discovery. How we can start doing a light version of business discovery that doesn't have to go to a very extensive business case, but something that our teams start practicing and start getting better at, and try to identify those opportunities and not just taking requests at face value, but really understanding if those requests are aligning with our strategic goals. Which ones are they going to have a better impact or not? At that point, if you really understand your strategic goals, if you really understand the opportunity and the potential of an opportunity, scoring methods like RISE become quite useless because you already understand very well what is the potential of that opportunity. And that's why I think that those ones fell, but let's not go there now. Now, as for other tips, how to do this, when you are looking at your work, the easiest rule of thumb to follow is that when you see an opportunity, if you have defined clearly a product strategy, it should be very straightforward to understand that, is this opportunity contributing to a strategy, or is this just a one-off? If you are visualizing this like with a KPI trees, it's much easier then to understand that this is contributing to this strategy. Now, the second tip that I will give you is that strategic or alignment doesn't happen with more meetings. I know it's probably you already guessed this, but product leaders tend to try to solve alignment with meetings, and usually you don't adding more meetings is not solving the alignment. Creating a system with product strategy, with alignment across different teams, that is going to achieve alignment, not just adding more meetings to try to align when the goals are not aligned. Finally, and this is the toughest one, but if you're a product leader, you have a say, is that alignment happens at the top. If you as a product leader, or you as a sales or marketing leader, or as a business unit lead, cannot align the goals and the strategies that those different teams are following, alignment in the bottom, in the teams, is not going to happen, because the teams are going to follow different strategies. They're going to follow different goals. They are going to go in different directions. So if you're not able to align at the top, it's not going to translate into alignment in the teams that are actually going to be doing the work. So this is what I would say. Make sure that you're giving a clear strategy to your teams to start to make decisions, prioritize the work that they are doing. Make sure that you are helping them align by creating a system with the prior strategy that is going to help them work together and go in the same direction. And finally, make sure that you are promoting alignment at the top. Alignment at the bottom, you can promote it, but it's going to be a one team and another team. If you have many teams, it's going to be really difficult to scale. So alignment has to happen in the top. That's how you are going to spread across the different functional teams like sales, product, marketing, how you are going to enable them to work together, go in the same direction. I finished this with a quote, this presentation. And I want to maybe go through that quote again. Is that successful teams didn't have more hours. They have better systems. If you want to know more about this, if you want to understand better how you are aligning your work in your company, and if you even want to do an assessment, please take a look at the couple of links that are in the description. And if you're interested, just go check them out. I'm sure that they're going to help you or you're going to find them useful. Yes, so if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more about this, more about how to achieve a strategic alignment. And I'll see you in the next one.